Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia, and today it's time for a haul video. I haven't done a haul video in a couple of months because I am a pillar of restraint and moderation. Rightio, let's just go with that. Okay, well, I do have some books that have accumulated over the past weeks, and I want to talk about them and share them with you. And as is always true, there are a couple of books out in the stratosphere slowly making their way to me that will have to be included the next time I do a haul, which surely will not be for months and months on end due to the aforementioned restraint and moderation. But let's see what I have. A little summer haul, if you will. And this is, I don't know how many. This is like 8 or 9 books, and I think it's pretty divided. Maybe it's more backlist than newish. I don't know. Let's just see what we got here. The first book, you've seen it before because it was in my TBR video the other day for August, and it is this annotated edition. It is called The Annotated Wasteland with Eliot's Contemporary Prose. Of course, T.S. Eliot is the author. The annotations and introductions are by Rainey. I bought this because we're going to be reading The Wasteland in the Eliot and August project that I'm participating in. I'm one of the hosts. There's a bunch of co-hosts. I'll list names in the notes, but you've heard me talk about this a couple of times. It's been going great so far. Right now we're talking about the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, but eventually we're going to get to The Wasteland. And this is a poem that I've never really been able to figure out in the past, and we're going to spend a good deal of time on it. I got this off of eBay, and the copy that I got, somebody must have really been studying The Wasteland because every single page of the actual poem is heavily noted. Looking forward to exploring some of the other contents in the book. The next book is also courtesy of my excitement during a booktube event. So July was Jane Austen in July. I read a really great nonfiction book from my shelf, that memoir, Austen Years by Rachel Cohen. And I read Emma with the group read in the Discord, but a lot of people were reading this new release, and I got really excited and ordered it, even though I knew I wasn't going to have time to read it during the month. I tried to find it at a library, and there was 50 people in line. I thought, oh, I don't want to wait. It's going to take like a year. So I did buy myself a copy of Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney. I do have a little bit of a Jane Austen nonfiction section sort of growing in my library at home, and I thought this would be a great addition. The cover caught my eye to begin with, and then in this book, Rebecca Romney, who is a rare book dealer, she goes on a bit of a quest to explore books by the authors that would have been Jane Austen's contemporaries, the books that she would have been reading. Jane Austen was not a lone genius. She wrote at a time of great experimentation for women writers, and clues about those women are sprinkled in like breadcrumbs throughout Austen's work. Every character in Northanger Abbey who isn't a bore sings the praises of Anne Radcliffe. The phrase Pride and Prejudice came from Frances Burney's second novel, Cecilia, and so on and so forth. So Romney investigates the lives and work of the women writers whom Austen loved: Frances Burney, Anne Radcliffe, Charlotte Lennox, Hannah More, Charlotte Smith, Elizabeth Inchbald, Hester Lynch Thrale Piozzi, and Maria Edgeworth. Now, some of those authors I am a little familiar with. Maybe I've read a little bit, or at least I've heard about them, been curious about them, and a couple of them I've never even heard of. So I am really interested to hear about Romney's exploration, and she's coming from that position of being a rare book dealer, which is an interesting angle that I think will be fun to read. So I don't know exactly when I'm going to read this, just when I feel like it. And if somehow I never feel like it and it gets all the way around to July, then that will be my nonfiction book next year. But I think I'll read it before then. I've been inspired by the Jane Austen month to read not only this, but also Mansfield Park, which is, I've mentioned this before, it's the only Jane Austen novel that I've only ever read one time because I just didn't really love it. And I've been meaning for years to give it another chance, and it just keeps coming up. And people keep talking or referring to it, and Cohen talked about it a lot in that book, Austen Years and Now. So that's the next Jane Austen-y thing I want to read, but this is not far behind. So back in June, I read The Master by Colm Toibin. It was one of my selections for Pride Month. Colm Toibin is one of my favorite authors. It's a historical fiction novel about the author Henry James. And then that led to a rereading of Washington Square, a book by Henry James that I had enjoyed in the past. And I read these two books with my friend Michael, who had previously read The Master, and it's one of his favorite novels. And I was a first-timer reading it, but a big enthusiast of Colm Toibin. But in the course of reading The Master, I became curious about an author named Constance Fenimore Woolson, who was a contemporary of James and one of his close personal friends. He remains famous, but she does not. But I became curious about her writings, and so I ordered a copy of this short story collection by Woolson called Miss Grief. And so this is a collection of short stories. Wouldn't you know, there's a foreword by Colm Toibin. So this whole section is Toibin Made Me Do It. She was another American that lived mainly abroad in Europe, like James and like a number of other people in that time period, the kind of late Victorian and then early 20th century time period. And so these stories, oh, there's a little picture of her. Whoop. So her life span was 1840 to 1894. She depicted with precise realism and great empathy a broad landscape of Americans and their ways, from the people of the rural Midwest and Deep South to socially refined expatriates in Europe. Whether portraying the keeper of a Union soldiers' cemetery in the defeated South, a woman writer whose genius goes unrecognized, or Americans romancing in Florence, Woolson wrote with a remarkable minuteness of observation and tenderness of feeling in the words of her friend and fellow author, Henry James. So I'm very curious to try these out. Michael discovered them himself back when he first read The Master and said that he ended up buying a number of copies and giving it to friends at the time. So I'm very excited to check out these stories. And I have a little pile of short story collections that I am going to be sampling in September. So you'll be seeing this come up again in a September TBR. I also there's a little intro to each story with a little background. The first story is called St. Clair Flats. Here's a little bit of the opening. In September 1855, I first saw the St. Clair Flats. Owing to Raymond's determination, we stopped there. Why go on, he asked. Why cross another long, rough lake when here is all we want? But no one ever stops here, I said. So much the better, we shall have it all to ourselves. But we must at least have a roof over our heads. I presume we can find one. That's the first paragraph. I don't think I want to stop in St. Clair Flats if there's not even a place to lodge. So we'll see what happens. We're still on Toibin Made Me Do It. He also made me buy a copy of this other book, The Magician, that I found recently at Half Price Books. This one, which is kind of a tome, is about Thomas Mann. So it's another literary historical fiction novel, and I've heard really good things about this as well. Now here's the thing though, I haven't ever read anything by Thomas Mann. I haven't really ever even thought about Thomas Mann. He's one of those authors that's lurking around in the corners that I know I should probably try, but he's not on the main list of authors I'm meaning to try. He's sort of on a back burner list, but he might have to move to the front if I'm going to read this book. And I guess what I have to decide is, do I want to try to read something by Thomas Mann and learn a little bit about him first and then read this book, or not? Or does it matter? So this one came out in 2021. This novel opens in a provincial German city at the turn of the 20th century, where a boy, Thomas Mann, grows up with a conservative father, bound by propriety, and a Brazilian mother, alluring and unpredictable. Young man hides his artistic aspirations from his father and his homosexual desires from everyone. He's infatuated with the son of one of the richest, most cultured Jewish families in Munich and marries the daughter. He and Katya have 6 children. All right, and then it goes on, it talks a little bit more about his life and his work. And so I'm curious, but that's my big question is, do I just dive in? Well, it's not going to happen like immediately because I got to big roster of other things to read, but when I get ready to read it, do I dive in or do I try to read and learn a little bit more about Thomas Mann first? Chapter 1, Lubeck, 1891. His mother waited upstairs while the servants took coats and scarves and hats from the guests. Until everyone had been ushered into the drawing room, Julia Mann remained in her bedroom. Thomas and his older brother Heinrich and their sisters Lula and Carla watched from the first landing. Soon, they knew, their mother would appear. Heinrich had to warn Carla to be quiet or they'd be told to go to bed and they would miss the moment. Their baby brother Victor was sleeping in an upper room. With her hair pinned back severely and tied in a colored bow, Julia stepped out from her bedroom. Her dress was white and her black shoes, ordered specifically from Mallorca, were simple like a dancer's shoes. All right, so some kids are spying, maybe on a party. That's all I got so far. Actually, I'm a big fan of those scenes where kids are lurking and hiding and spying and watching and privy to social scenarios or conversations that they weren't supposed to hear. I like that little effect in a story. Okay, now the next couple of books are newish releases, and the category is Booker prediction videos made me do it. And what can I say? I'm easily influenced, especially if it looks like my library does not have the book or can't have access, or there's a wait list that is 900 people deep, and I clearly need to read the book sooner than that. Now, as fate may have it, neither of these books actually is on the Booker list, but I still have a big desire to read them. I could do a list, I could do a video like this where it's my imaginary Booker list, and it's sort of a mashup of things that actually are on the list and the ones that I'm most excited about that everyone talked about that didn't make the list. So I probably could do, here's my actual personal 13 books I'm going to read that's somehow rose up out of Booker's season. So the first one is The Book of Records by Madeleine Thien. This is a speculative novel. Okay, I just edited out a really bad verbal blunder, like oh my gosh, you just have to imagine. This is going to be a buddy read with my friend Pat. It's coming up. We're very excited. A novel that leaps across centuries, past and future, as if different eras were separated by only a door. Lena and her father arrive at an enclave called the Sea, a staging post between migrations with only a few possessions. In this mysterious and shape-shifting place, a building made of time, pasts and futures collide. I've heard a couple of excellent reviews of this book. I still don't 100% understand how all of this is constructed, but I'm really, really intrigued to find out because it just sounds so engrossing. It sounds like the perfect book to do a buddy read with. And the first opening is part 1, Lena. Half a century ago, during the rainy season, when I was 7 years old, my father and I reached the sea. It was evening and the buildings were colored glass against the night. I remembered that we disembarked into water, we crossed the sand, we entered a pale door of the sea. Inside, the hallways were noisy and hot. There were people everywhere, and I wanted to escape to the open air. But my father found a room in which we and others could shelter. For a day, perhaps even 2, I slept. When I awoke, I saw my father standing at the window, mesmerized by something I couldn't see or hear. His yellow sweater glowed in the blue light. Well, I want to know more, and I will know more in just a few weeks. The other one that I just had to have and ordered from Blackwell's is Muckle Fluga by Michael Pedersen. Every time I see this book, I just want to say, yippee-ki-yay, Muckle Fluga. So immature, sorry. Just couldn't resist. So this one, this whole thing where, I'm so drawn to these books where there's the remote island and hardly anybody's there, and then somebody arrives. It's the colony, it's clear, it's a bunch of books. It's a couple other books that I still am thinking about, like Sea Scraper, that really is on the Booker list. So here we have, life on a remote island is turned upside down by a stranger's arrival, testing bonds of family and tradition and leaving a young dreamer's future hanging in the balance. So we have a lighthouse on an island. A lighthouse is tended by a dad known as the father, and his son, I think it's Ose, O-U-S-E, Ose, them and the occasional lodger to keep the wolf from the door. When one of the lodgers, Firth, a chaotic writer, arrives from Edinburgh, the limits of the world the keeper and his son cling to begin to crumble. A tug of war ensues between Firth and the lighthouse keeper for Ose's affections and his future. As new and old ways collide and life-changing decisions loom, what will the tides leave standing in their wake? So, I don't know. That setup just really draws me in. Also, it has this wonderful cover with sparkly waves. I'm not familiar with this author. He has a few other books. Oh, there's a map. I like that. Okay, so this book begins with a prologue, and here's the first paragraph. On the island of Muckle Fluga sits one of the most formidable lighthouses on this or any planet. Its wild pearl of light is capable of guiding boats and their humans to safety in spite of all manners of storms, gales, and hails, not to mention whirlpools, pirates, straying submarines, and a litany of other hunters of the aquatic deep. As for the more malevolent presences the light keeps at bay, the less said the better. So, is this guy who's coming going to be a malevolent presence? It sounds suspenseful, but not in a murder mystery kind of way, in a family tension and turning points kind of way. All right, we have 3 more. The next one is a book. I am kind of surprised at myself that I didn't buy this a long time ago. This is a collection of short stories by Sequoia Nagamatsu called Where We Go When All We Were Is Gone. That's a mouthful. Where We Go When All We Were Is Gone. I read and loved How High We Go in the Dark. I've read it twice. I will read it again. I love that book so much. It's connected stories that kind of form a novel, and it's dystopian, and it's sad and beautiful, and I really, really love that book. And I knew when I read it that he had previously published a collection of short stories, but somehow I never pursued it until now. And then one day I had one of my treadmill epiphanies, and I thought, wait a minute, Sequoia Nagamatsu, does he have a new book coming out? And I looked it up, and then I once again encountered the old book, and I thought, why don't I have this? I have to have this. So I have ordered a copy. This is another thing on my stack of short stories. All right, September's going to be off the hook because I'm doing 30 stories in 30 days, but then I also have a bunch of short story collections, and I have some short novels and books about art, and then a bunch of other projects and reading groups where the book isn't even a shorty. So if you thought July and August were a little insane, hang on, September is right around the corner. It's outrageous. So I will have to pick and choose and narrow down, but at least I can sample. I could read a story or 2 out of each of these books, and then I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll read the whole thing. Maybe I'll just pick one and read it all. Why am I planning my September TBR in the middle of this haul video? Sorry, I got distracted. A combination of the mystical, magical, and marvelous, Sequoia Nagamatsu weaves a collection of bold, hysterical, and moving tales into an unforgettable debut. From shape-shifters to star makers to babies made of snow, the characters in Where We Go When All We Were Is Gone form a community of longing, of the surreal, of wonder. What a joy it is to read each and every story. All right, the first story is called The Return to Monsterland, and it begins with a transcript. Ooh, it's got some interesting form. It has, the whole story is like some sort of entries in field notes. All right, the first piece is called Train Car 1998. Maya called me from the train car that Godzilla had grabbed hold of. Okay, I'm in. No screaming or sobbing, no confession of great regrets, no final professions of love. She did not ask to speak to our 5-year-old daughter, who was unknowingly watching the news coverage of her mother's impending death as the train crashed into the side of a skyscraper and through a set of power lines. My wife spoke of feeling the radiation of his body coursing through her own, the view down his Cretaceous mouth, an atomic breath swirling in a maelstrom of blue light. And then, before there was nothing but a roar and static, she said, You should be here. He's simply magnificent. Oh, wow. Every Shorty September has to have something that is completely weird. I think I found it. Okay, now the next one. It is BookTube made me do it. It is a booktuber made me do it. Do you watch Melinda's channel, A Web of Stories? If you don't, pause and go over there and subscribe immediately, because she is wonderful and she reads a fantastic range of fiction and nonfiction, and she's funny and delightful, insightful, and all the good things. And I know what her favorite book is because she mentions it frequently. Her all-time favorite novel, unless she's changed her mind, I believe she has said this on more than one occasion, and I was browsing at Half Price Books the same day that I got The Magician, and I wasn't looking for anything in particular that day, but I was just browsing along, and then it jumped out at me, and it was only like $3, but it's in perfect condition, and it is Mink River by Brian Doyle. This is one of those things I never would have, well, maybe I would have picked this up and looked at it because the cover is pretty cool, but I would never have heard of this book or this author if Melinda didn't wax melodic on this on many occasions. Brian Doyle, 1956 to 2017, the author of more than 24 novels, works of nonfiction, and collections of essay, poems, and short stories. And this is widely regarded as a contemporary classic of Northwest literature. It's like Dylan Thomas's Under Milkwood and Sherwood Anderson's Winesburg, Ohio, which is in that short story pile. Brian Doyle's stunning fiction debut brings a town to life through the jumbled lives and braided stories of its people. Right there, I love that kind of book. In a distinctive and lyrical voice, Doyle tells the town in all its humanness and oddity and beauty. There are love affairs and almost love affairs, brawls and boats, Irish immigrants and Salish stories, mud and laughter. There's a Department of Public Works that gives haircuts and counts insects, a policeman addicted to Puccini, beer, and berries, and a philosophizing crow. Readers will close the book more than a little sad to leave the village of Newanaka on the wet coast of Oregon, beneath the hills that used to boast the biggest trees in the history of the world. Okay, so if I was just walking through a bookstore and I saw this on a table and then I read that, there's a good chance I would be very interested, and then I'd look up and try to find reviews. But I didn't have to do any of that because Melinda already said this book was absolutely mesmerizing. So I didn't think twice, and I brought it home, and I'm very excited to eventually get around to reading it. It just sounds so good. It's a great example of finding out about lesser known books by watching and listening to other readers, finding people that you share some interests with, that you have a good piece of Venn diagram with, and just storing some of their recommendations in your mind or on paper or in your phone or somewhere. And so when you are out in the wild at a used bookstore, you can look up some of those lesser known authors. I wasn't looking for this. It just sort of leapt out at me in a serendipitous, fantastic moment. But I'm very happy that I found it. And then the final book is the book that I received for July from Deep Vellum Press. So I talked about in another video how I have subscribed to Deep Vellum Press, which is an independent publisher based in Dallas, Texas, in the historic Deep Ellum neighborhood. So their name is a play on words. And they are the largest translator, the largest publisher of translated fiction, translated international fiction in the U.S. I'm going to get that sentence out. This particular book is not a translated work. They do publish about half and half, according to their website, books written in English and translated books. And they have about 5 or 6 different imprints. They're growing. And so I joined their subscription service and receive 1 book every month. And last time, my first time, I got a poetry book, and this time I got a novel. And I'm so excited. This novel sounds so good. It came in the mail. I didn't save it to open on camera, but I just wanted to open it. I couldn't wait. But the book that I received, well, first of all, I got this cute postcard with Dallas scenes on it. And I got a letter about the book. And the book is Lookout by Christine Byl. I did look her up on YouTube, where she is speaking at an event to figure out how she pronounces her last name, and it's Byl. I mean, this just feels really nice too. This is a nice production. And this book, it's kind of a Western, but not exactly. So I think the blurb makes it sound pretty good, but the letter is even better. The letter, Jill Myers, who wrote this letter, what came along with the book, has some information about the book and the author, and she sold it to me really well. Just listen and see if you also would want to read this book. Lookout gives me something I didn't know I wanted. It is a beautiful work about the West, written by a woman that recasts the myths of the West. It's the anti-Western Western. But wait, perhaps that makes it sound like a polemic, and that's not what I intend at all. Lookout shows us what it means to love a place and keep loving it fiercely. It's full of intimate knowledge of Montana's great wilderness and its towns as well, and of the lives lived there. We follow a hotshot crew out fighting wildfires into some intense and unexpected moments and catch a glimpse of a gentle and meticulous woodworker in his studio. Lookout recalls the wonder of Annie Dillard and the grit of Annie Proulx. There are also fun little winks at Little House on the Prairie. At its heart, this book is about a family struggling but bound by a deep love for each other, coming out to itself. All right, so the author lives in Alaska. She has worked for the Forest Service and the National Park Service. Family saga, set in Montana. Something I would not have probably stumbled upon, and I'm really pleased with what they have sent me this month. Okay, that is all for today. Let me know, have you read these books? Are you interested in these books? I really appreciate in advance all your comments. I'd love to hear what you think and what's going on. Love to chat with you. And I hope that you're having a great day and a good week. And I will be back soon. See you later.